Well, hello there, friends, and welcome back to Royalty USA. I am Lina, your royal news reporter, and today we have a story that is serious and complicated and deeply human all at once. A story that is about family loyalty and public duty, and the moment when those two things pull in completely opposite directions, and a man has to choose which one wins. Today we are talking about Prince William and his uncle Andrew, and the story that has just come out of a brand new royal biography that is turning heads on both sides of the Atlantic. Because what Robert Hardman has revealed in his new book about Queen Elizabeth changes everything we thought we knew about how William really feels about the most disgraced member of the British royal family. Let me start at the beginning because this story has many layers and I want to make sure you have all of them. Andrew's fall from grace intensified in October 2025 when King Charles removed his brother's royal titles amid growing scrutiny over his links to convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. The controversy deepened with new documents and public attention surrounding the case. Now, for those of you who have been following this story, and I know many of you have because it has been in the news for years, you know that Andrew's association with Jeffrey Epstein has been one of the most damaging scandals to touch the British royal family in living memory. Epstein was a convicted sex offender who trafficked young women and girls, and Andrew's friendship with him, spanning years and including visits to his properties even after Epstein's first conviction, has never been adequately explained or accounted for. Hello! And the situation has only gotten worse. As the U.S. Department of Justice continued to release files in 2026, fresh accusations that Andrew had shared sensitive information with Epstein arose. The former prince was held for questioning for 11 hours before he was released. Though he was not charged, investigations continue, and he is being held under bail-like conditions. 11 hours of questioning by police, not charged, but still under investigation. Still under what are described as bail-like conditions. This is not a man who has been cleared. This is a man whose situation has continued to get darker and more serious with every passing month. Royal family. The exile process had been in the works for some time, but came to a head in October when it was announced that he and his ex-wife Sarah Ferguson would be kicked out of the luxurious royal lodge. Andrew remained in the 30-room Windsor estate until he was booted in early February and cast out to Sandringham. He spent some time on Wood Farm before last month making his final move to the more modest Marsh Farm. From a 30-room Windsor estate to Marsh Farm. That journey, that physical, geographical shrinking of Andrew's world, tells the story of his fall from grace more vividly than any newspaper headline could. Royal Lodge to Wood Farm to Marsh Farm, each move smaller, each move further from the center of royal life, each move a consequence of decisions made years ago that have now caught up with him completely. Royal Family Now Here is where Robert Hardman's new biography changes the story in the most unexpected way, because everything we thought we knew about William's relationship with Andrew was that it was cold, distant, that William, the future king, the man most invested in protecting the monarchy's reputation, had effectively written his uncle off, that the public distance between them was total and real and permanent. And then Hardman published his book and revealed something that nobody saw coming in Elizabeth II, in private, in public. Her story by Robert Hardman, the royal biographer, wrote that Prince William made a surprising call to his uncle after the shocking title announcement was made. Some accounts suggested that he was the driving force behind his uncle Andrew being stripped of his titles and honors and banished to a house on the Sandringham estate. One friend of the former Yorks, however, reported that on the night they lost their titles, Andrew had been very touched when Prince William was one of the few people to call to offer condolences. One of the few people to call. On the night, Andrew lost everything. When the phones were presumably not ringing off the hook for a disgraced former prince, William called. He offered condolences, and Andrew was touched. Genuinely, deeply touched that his nephew reached out in that darkest moment. Unofficial royalty friends. I have been sitting with that detail since I first read it, and I keep coming back to the same feeling. because it reveals something about William that I think is genuinely beautiful and genuinely important. Here is a man who has spent years doing everything right publicly when it comes to Andrew, maintaining distance, expressing concern for victims, making clear through spokespeople that he and Kate are deeply troubled by the continuing revelations. All of that is real, and all of that is right, and none of that has changed. But on the night his uncle lost his titles and his home and his place in the royal family, William picked up the phone, because Andrew is still his uncle, because family is still family, because no matter how complicated and how painful the situation is, there is something in William that would not let that night pass without reaching out to a man who was suffering. According to Hardman's research, the distance Prince William maintained from his uncle following the Epstein scandal was a strictly public exercise. Behind closed doors, the relationship was reportedly far softer. Strictly public. Those words matter enormously. They tell us that William is not performing compassion behind closed doors while performing coldness in public. He is performing the necessary public distance that protecting the monarchy requires, while privately holding on to the human thread that connects him to his uncle. And that distinction between what a future king must do publicly and what a human being does privately is one of the most quietly profound things I have ever heard about William. Unofficial Royalty A source recently told a publication that William has seen firsthand how quickly scandals can spiral and dominate the narrative around the monarchy. He has. He watched it happen with his own parents. He watched the Diana years and the Charles years, and the way that personal failures became public catastrophes, and how those catastrophes damaged not just individuals but the entire institution. He grew up in the wreckage of one royal scandal, and he has spent his entire adult life determined not to let another one consume the monarchy he will one day lead. And so when it comes to Andrew, publicly, firmly, without wavering, William draws the line. No return, no rehabilitation, no pretending that what happened did not happen or that the victims do not matter. Hello! Shortly after the release of yet more Epstein files, a spokesperson for the Waleses said in February that they were deeply concerned by the continuing revelations. Their thoughts remain focused on the victims. That statement, so clear, so unambiguous, so deliberately centered on the people who actually suffered, tells you everything about where William stands publicly on this matter. And it is the right place to stand. The victims of Jeffrey Epstein are real people who endured real horrors. And any conversation about Andrew's fate has to begin and end with that reality. Hello. And yet William called. On the night his uncle lost everything, William called. Now, I want to talk about what this means for the future, because that is really the heart of the story that Robert Hardman is telling. Prince William is unlikely to allow Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor back into royal life while remaining mindful of his struggles and the family's responsibility. Unlikely to allow him back, while remaining mindful of his struggles. That careful phrasing, that deliberate acknowledgement that Andrew is a human being who is struggling even as the door to royal life stays firmly closed, that is William all over. Firm where firmness is required. Human where humanity is possible. Trend. Hunter, because here is the truth of this situation as Lina sees it, and as I think any fair person has to see it. Andrew cannot come back, not because William is heartless, not because the royal family is cruel, but because the victims of Jeffrey Epstein deserve better than a rehabilitation narrative for one of the men connected to their abuser, because the monarchy's credibility, already tested by this scandal in ways that will take years to fully understand, cannot survive Andrew being welcomed back as though nothing happened. And because William, who will one day be king, has a responsibility to an institution and to a public that goes beyond family loyalty. But, and this is the part that makes William not just a future king but a genuinely good man, he did not let Andrew face that worst night alone. He called. He offered what comfort he could privately while maintaining what distance he must publicly. And Andrew, sitting in whatever room he was in on the night his world collapsed, was touched that his nephew thought of him. That tension is between public duty and private compassion, between institutional responsibility and family love, is one of the most human tensions that exists. Most of us will never face it at this scale. Most of us will never have to choose between protecting an institution of centuries of history and reaching out to a struggling family member. But in a smaller way, in the texture of our own family lives, most of us understand something of what that feels like. The family member who has done wrong, the need to hold a line publicly, and the quiet human impulse that picks up the phone anyway on the worst night. William is going to be a remarkable king. I have believed that for a long time, and everything I learn about him only deepens that belief, because he understands that leadership is not just about the public face. It is about what you do when nobody is watching. It is about the phone call you make on a dark night to a struggling uncle that you cannot publicly defend, but cannot privately abandon either. It is about holding the line and holding the hand at the same time, and knowing, somehow, how to do both. Andrew Mountbatten Windsor will not return to royal life. That chapter is closed, and it should be. But he received a phone call on the night it closed from the man who will one day be king. And that call touched him. And that, in the midst of all the darkness and the scandal and the institutional necessity, is something quietly, deeply human. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today here at Royalty USA. I am Lina, your royal news reporter, and this story is one of the most layered and most meaningful I have brought to you. If it gave you something to think about, please give it a thumbs up and share it with someone who follows the royal family as closely as you do. And please subscribe to Royalty USA if you have not already, because we have so much more royalty to pour, and I want you here for every single drop. Leave me a comment below. What do you think of William's secret phone call to Andrew? Does it change how you see him? I want to know every thought. I read every single comment. Until next time, God save the king. God bless America. This is Lina and Royalty. USA will see you very soon, darlings.